It's a Sunday and it only means one thing. It's time to have a sit down with an incredible woman in sport. And today our guest is Emy Casaletti-Bwalya, CEO of Optimize Agency. From the 2010 FIFA World Cup to the 2025 Beach Soccer World Cup, she's worked in there and her influence is one that you don't want to miss. Let's have a chat with Emy Casaletti-Bwalya. And our guest this afternoon is a marketing extraordinaire in the world of sport, Emy Casaletti-Bwalya. Emy, thank you so much for joining us. I know a lot about you, but I don't know the beginning. And I'm so excited to hear the story, where it all began and your passion for sports.
Thank you, Lonwabo. So it started a long time ago when I was still a little girl with 4 big brothers and a father who was a football coach in Argentina. So we came to South Africa when I was 9 years old. And needless to say, I was a tomboy with soccer-playing brothers and a father giving instructions what to do. So I went to university. I went to school, went to university, studied international relations and languages. And then my family decided to bring in an Italian brand called Roba di Kappa, which was a relatively unknown brand at the time in the 80s, and they said to me, come and help us in the store. So we opened our first store in Hyde Park, and I started doing the shop windows, started helping clients, and I really started getting into it. And eventually we opened a store in Small Street Mall, and that was the busiest store. And it was packed with people. And by virtue of this intermingling with everybody, Small Street Mall, I mean, that really does get you into marketing to understand the market. And that's when we said, no, we've got to get involved in football, because the mother company in Italy was very much involved in sport. AC Milan, Juventus, all the big Italian clubs. So we said, no, we've got to do something locally. And that's when we approached Zola Mahobe of Mamelodi Sundowns. And that was the first entry into football, 1983, and we sponsored Mamelodi Sundowns.
Wow.
And needless to say, the stores just kept growing and growing. The brand just started exploding, and Kappa was a household brand.
That's interesting, because I feel like Kappa is one of the brands that feel like they're South African. So it's interesting to me that it's actually an international brand, because when I think of Kappa, I think of South African teams. I think of Kasi Township, which is particularly interesting. But before we go deeper into that, I just want to rewind a little bit, going back to when you come to South Africa. How was that transition from you? Because Argentina and South Africa are worlds apart, not just in distance, but in culture and tradition as well.
Well, my parents were nomads. They traveled and immigrated to so many different countries. And when I came here, I came straight from Australia. From Sydney, Australia. So I was a young 9-year-old with an Australian accent, threw me into South African school where I had to learn Afrikaans, and I was teased because of my accent. But it helps to have big brothers. and it, I got through, and I think that agility and adaptability to be able to go into different countries. When we immigrated to Australia, it was from Italy. So I was a young Italian girl not knowing a word of English.
Sure.
And with 6 kids in the family, your parents don't really have the time to look after you and pamper you. They just throw you into school, sink or swim. So I think from those lessons, I think those lessons are really good for children. And that's why when parents say, oh, I don't want to change school. It's so good for your child.
Because then that adaptability and having to swim and you have no choice.
And that's augured really well for me in the future. When I go to different countries, I have to adapt to different cultures, and I do so beautifully, because I don't have any issues with
So then you start with that relationship with Mamelodi Sundowns, the first teams that you work with. What's your role then?
So by then I was already into the marketing and sponsorship and advertising role, as a family member. Don't forget that's without studying or anything. It sounds very cliche. But Zola Mahobe was my client because I looked after him and I made sure. And he's the one that said, why don't you sponsor my team? It wasn't as formal as it is now.
Yes, with the deals and the amounts of contracts.
Exactly. And I went back to the family and I said, listen, this team is small, because at the time, this was not a big team. But let's do it. Let's get involved in football. And needless to say, Sundowns also grew together with Kappa. And we were the first company that really started sponsoring the team on and off the field. So yes, we dressed them with their kit, but then we gave them chinos and brogue shoes and white polos with the jacket, and the team really looked fantastic on and off the field, building the brand, our brand and their brand simultaneously.
Are there some players that stand out back then that were the stars of the Sundowns team?
Yes, of course. Mark Anderson, the goalkeeper. It was funny because he was the only white player in the team. Sammy Trotton, Mark Anderson, Harold Lechodi, Iwi Kambule, Brix Modao.
Sure. So all the legends of Mamelodi Sundowns.
I'm going to get blasted for not remembering the others. But that's some of them, yeah.
And let's stay on that culture shift, Amy, coming from the amounts of travel, Italy, Argentina, Australia, you've mentioned as well, coming to a South Africa that has its own different history. And now you go straight into the belly of South Africa, which is Johannesburg and Small Street. It doesn't
Mamelodi. And
Mamelodi as well.
Yeah.
How is then that for you, also coming to the fact that you said you came in here with that accent, the treatment of this white lady that's coming into our neighborhoods and working with some of the people that we see as our stars?
Yeah, I think that really shaped me as a human, the apartheid era. Because in the 80s, when I was going into Mamelodi, was in the, I got arrested, I wasn't supposed to be there, all sorts of things. But the way I was welcomed compared to vice versa really shaped me as a person. I think it taught me a lot. And I come from a background of not caring, so I didn't care. So, I was the only white person at the matches sitting on the sidelines. And but I was always made to feel so welcome. I was like the queen. I was the queen of Mamelodi. So, the lesson there is really a deep, deep lesson. How you're accepted in one community, and then when you bring your friends from that community into your own community, how the roles are completely different.
So we've gone to Small Street, coming all the way from Argentina and Italy, talking to CEO of Optimize Agency, Emy Casaletti-Bwalya. And when we come back, we dig in deeper because she did also partner with one of the biggest brands in football in the country, and many say in the continent, and I definitely agree. It's Women in Sport Africa, coming up after the break. And welcome back to Women in Sport Africa. And as per usual, Ndege Njwayelo, we're joined by a trailblazer of note who's taking us down memory lane when it comes to the history, not just of her career, but also the history of South African football and the iconic jerseys that we've gone to love. And we still hunt to this day because we go back and we say, I want that 1996 jersey, for example, that Bafana Bafana wore when they won that AFCON. So, Amy, now you've told us about Mamelodi Sundowns and the early stages of that team, but I suppose then that transition to Kaizer Chiefs at the time, and working with brands like Kaizer Chiefs that have become household names. And I know your family came with Kappa, but the store was then sold and you moved to Reebok. Tell us about that era and how Kaizer Chiefs comes into the picture.
Yeah, so we signed Kaizer Chiefs as Kappa in 1988, 5 years after Mamelodi Sundowns. It took a lot of negotiating because different caliber of club. And they were with Puma at the time. They had been with Puma for many, many years, but we managed to convince them to come with. We managed to convince Kaizer to sign with us in 1988. And same thing with Chiefs. I think Chiefs saw what we did for Sundowns, and that was a big attraction for them because we dressed them both on and off the field.
Yes.
And Chiefs were superstars, you know, the glamour boys. We had to glamorize everything we did for them. And 1988, and then in 91 we signed Bafana. 1991 we were the very first sponsor of Bafana before Castle. That's before they were readmitted into FIFA.
Yes.
1991.
Still deeply entrenched in our South African history. From your family's perspective, because now they're watching all of this, and a family that came from Argentina, but now becoming a crucial part of South African football and its history.
Yeah. No, we were very lucky to have we were lucky to understand the market so very well, because from a marketing perspective, we had a store in Hyde Park Corner, very upmarket,
yes.
a store in Sandton City, upmarket, store in Small Street Mall. So we were playing with two completely different markets at the time, called black market, white market. So people would say, you are crazy, you've got two stores in the white market, and now you want to sponsor a soccer team. But we knew with the masses, we knew that was how to build the brand. So you would find a woman in Sandton in a Mercedes with a Kappa sticker on her car, and then there was a Putco bus with Mamelodi Sundowns on it. So at the time, okay, it doesn't sound, that differentiating of the market was very, very rife at the time. So it was in 1988 when we said, you know what, let's sponsor a white market sport as well. And we went to Natal Sharks, who was the biggest team. So we had the biggest soccer club in Chiefs, and we had the biggest rugby team in Natal Sharks at the time, please. Don't quote me now, at the time. So we balanced that out. And then there were sanctions in South Africa. So we had the American track and field team in 1996, which included the likes of Flojo, Edwin Moses, Carl Lewis, all those top black athletes. So that helped us a lot. We weren't watching international football here, so you weren't seeing AC Milan and Juventus. So it was a tough balancing act, but despite all of that, we were mavericks in marketing at the time. We just went with our gut, and we knew what was working, what wasn't working. And the Kappa brand exploded. When we had sales, Small Street Mall, we had Brenda Fassie coming, jumping on the table and singing, without charging an appearance fee. She was just so happy to be there.
Yes.
I mean, it was, Kappa was really a vibe at the time.
And what does that do to you as a person? Also, are you seeing other women in the different boardrooms, so to speak, at the time? When you go to these different teams, how was the representation in terms of females?
Well, very little, of course. And also it took a lot of convincing for me to get credibility, because, I mean, what does this white girl know about football? But because I knew so much, once I started conversing and facts and figures, and that's why I say to young girls, know your stuff. It helps you if you know your stuff. And I think that gave me the credibility. I was always the kind of person who was in the background. I wanted the brands to shine. So you might not have seen me, in those days, you might not have seen me a lot, but women were nowhere. Women were absolutely nowhere. I had a friend and colleague, Bridget Motsepe, who was the PR of the NSL, and we were very close, and we were the only two women around at the time.
And now when you look around in different boardrooms and different meetings, how then does it feel to see how things have changed? And would you say that it's changed enough?
I would say, to answer the second question first, it hasn't changed enough, but it does make me happy to see what I do see. Especially I see young women coming up, standing their ground, knowing their facts, and standing up for themselves. I think the world has changed for the better. At the time when I was young and in the industry, we sucked it up, we went through hell, and just carried on focusing and carried on with the job, because it came with all sorts of risks and everything. But we kept working. I think women are a lot more protected now, which is fantastic. That's how it should be. And the growth for me is very encouraging, because I know when there are women, behind whether you admit it or not, behind every great man, there's a woman.
Yes.
So all these national teams, all these, rest assured, there's a lot of women behind the Springboks. There's a lot of women behind the cricket team. So we're getting there.
We're getting there slowly but surely. And I mean, credits to the likes of Emy for starting the movement, even without intention necessarily. But today we get to celebrate the amount of women in sport that are doing major things. And it's thanks to Emy and the work they've done there to open the doors, because that's what representation does. It's the Women in Sport Africa, called WISER for short. And when we come back, we dig deeper, because Emy has a lot involved in Kgatsatso Montjane's career as well. So we'll dig deep and ask more about that. You don't want to miss it. And welcome back to WISER, your Women in Sport Africa show, where we bring the trailblazers, the game changers, and today is definitely not an exception. Emy, so we know now your role at the beginning of Kappa and South Africa, that relationship, but then you moved to Reebok as well. But a lot of brands associated with your name, Coca-Cola, the 2010 FIFA World Cup, we know that there was involvement there as well. What would you say was the most challenging role that you embarked on in your career?
I took challenges with both hands. So in my mind, they're not challenges. They're fantastic opportunities. And if we translate the challenges to opportunities, I think when I stopped at the 2010 FIFA World Cup and was offered to join FIFA as an instructor, I think that was probably the most, that was the best opportunity. It was challenging,
yes,
but it was fantastic, because I've traveled to so many different countries on behalf of FIFA. It just really did, as they say, where one door closes, another one opens. This is really the case of a challenge turning into an opportunity.
And in those early moments, and I know you had to switch roles later on before we hosted the actual tournament in 2010, but just the early stages of it, having to realize that a World Cup is coming to the African continent for the first time. And I mean, you also have known the love for football in South Africa. How was that? How would you describe those moments for you?
It was the best. It really was an opportunity second to none. I mean, a World Cup, wow. And our job was really, it was twofold. In the beginning, was to dispel the rumors that we couldn't handle it, because that's what the world thought.
Yes.
There's no way South Africa can handle it. And at the same time, really build up the excitement within our own country. Given all our socioeconomic challenges, we had to really convince the country this is going to be great for us. So, being there while that excitement was growing, while we got more and more faith from an international perspective, was really exciting.
And that was one of the biggest game changers, because I think soon after that, we host many World Cups, and maybe many people are not aware that we've hosted Hockey World Cups, we've hosted the Cricket Women's World Cup in 2023, the Netball World Cup as well. And I think that was probably the biggest stamp to say that the African continent is very much capable.
Yeah, definitely. Don't forget that we managed to do a really good job of the African Nations Cup in '96, of the Rugby World Cup.
95.
So we were already doing great things. Of course, the FIFA World Cup is the pinnacle of organization. FIFA is pedantic when it comes to looking after their brand, because ultimately, as an LOC, you're just a custodian of their brand.
Yes.
So they're pedantic on how it's portrayed and how it's organized. So, we opened the door for, if we can do that, we could do anything. Yeah.
Let's move now to your work with Optimize Agency. When is it founded, and what inspired the start of your agency?
So it was founded in 2012. We were offered to handle the Telkom knockout. Don't forget my background, I'd handled the Rothmans Cup. Rothmans Cup was a very exciting football tournament back in the in the early 2000s. So we were offered to manage the Telkom knockout. We opened up this agency, 3 women, my sister Vivian, Nonhlanhla Nkosi and I, and opened up this agency, and we ran the Telkom knockout for 5 years, a very exciting project. We went on to take on the Botswana Premier League as a project, B-Mobile. And then we were handling also, and I was traveling out of the country doing all the FIFA work. So that's how the agency really came about. It was football focused.
Football focused at the time. And what was the vision, the greater vision for this agency that you're starting?
The vision was really to make people understand how one can commercialize a brand, a sporting brand, to generate revenue. I mean, that's very important. Sport on the field is very, very important, but sport off the field is just as important. And they have such synergy, and they need to work together, because you can't have a great sports person without sponsorship or without funding. That is true. And KG is a perfect example.
And would you say that then it's taking some time for athletes to understand that? Because for an athlete, mine is just to go play.
Yeah.
That's what I need to do.
And so it should be.
Yeah.
And so it should be.
And that's where the support from the agency comes in.
Correct.
And then your relationship with Kgatatso Montjane, I mean, at the time, we knew what she's capable of, but it was pre the Grand Slam titles that she's won.
Yeah.
How do you then meet Kgatatso, and how does that relationship come about?
So it was a funny story, because I got called by Metro FM, I can mention the evening show, to say, please can you talk about sponsorship? And they tricked me, because they got me on the line, and I started giving my whole story about sponsorship and this and that. And then I got asked, okay, if that's the case, then why does Kgatatso Montjane not have one sponsor?
Sure.
And
that is Andile Ncube.
Yes.
Yes.
And I had to quickly Google Kgatatso Montjane, and all of a sudden it started popping up her achievements. I said, wow, she should have sponsors. So then they were pushing, they were saying, so then why don't you take her? And then eventually I caved in and said, okay, I'll take her on pro bono. We won't charge her anything, and let's see what we can do. And you know, she came in the next day to meet us. We spoke that evening. She was at our office the next day, because she was on the verge of giving up her career. She really wanted to give up. And we took one look at her, and she inspired us. You know how you go through every day complaining, ugh, my nails, my this, my... And you know, she comes in with such a positive attitude, and you realize you've got so little to complain about. And she inspired us to the extent that it took us, I think it took us 2 months to raise more than 2 million for her to travel, for her to got a new wheelchair. We did so much for her in those 2 months.
Sure.
I think she went on to win the Grand Slams knowing that we had her back. I mean, we're not there yet. We're still going to do so much for her. But I think KG's knowing we had her back. She had a new wheelchair. Her flights were paid for. We got her Nike as a sponsor, cars, speaking gigs, and you know, we gave her the training. She's just turned, as we speak, she's at the US Open.
Yes.
Playing in a semi-final today. So sorry guys, I've lost my train of thought, because I realize this is on Sunday. By the time you flight this, she will already have played. So yes. I'm sorry about that. You'll cut that out. Yes. But KG should be an inspiration to all of us. From humble beginnings in Shisego, in Limpopo. You know, culturally, South Africa, a disabled child gets like, you know, this witchcraft, or, you know, there's all sorts of cultural issues. And she pulled through all of that, and she's just like a beacon of hope and a beacon of inspiration. And we've always sold her to sponsors. You know, disability sport is not sexy. It's not something you can sell like that. Yes. So we've always positioned her as a champion. She's a champion. Whether, I don't know if you've ever been on a wheelchair, it's very difficult to play tennis, hold the ball, to turn the wheelchair. I mean, it's crazy the amount of effort that goes into that. So we've always sold her as a champion, not as a CSI project. And I think that's worked really well for her, because her mindset has changed to that too.
It really has, and today we are completely proud to have an athlete like Kgatsatso Montjane representing South Africa as a Grand Slam champion, 4-time at that, and we're hoping to see more from Kgatsatso. We're expecting to see more because that's what we do, South Africans. We never get enough. When we see you capable, then we want more, and as the minister likes to say, South Africans like waiting at the airport and waiting to accept an athlete that has just come back from doing greatness, and key to that is the likes of Emy Casaletti-Bwalya behind the scenes pushing the athletes. So I think this is the perfect moment to wrap it up with Emy, because we do have a second part that will be flighting in the following week, and we'll go into somewhat of a masterclass to understand the project KG in greater detail, but more as well, including Seychelles 2025, a beach soccer World Cup where Emy Casaletti was as well. So that is coming up next week on the Women in Sport Africa show with myself, Lonwabo Miso. But for now, have a lovely afternoon further.